The title is, what's the title?
The Law Center for Better Housing.
All right, that's right.
Legal aid, yeah.
Legal aid. So come on in, people. This is live, uncut, unedited. I'm going to introduce everybody in 1 second. Matter of fact, we'll start with our guest right here first.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Spreadberry, and I am a staff attorney at the Law Center for Better Housing.
Okay.
Hello. I am the attorney here for Teamwork Englewood in the Records Relief Department.
All right, everybody, and you already know who I am. No, it's Vera. This is Vera Giles Norris here with my partner, letting it cat out the bag, uncut and unedited.
All right, y'all know my name is Martin G. Johnson, aka The Crime Chase. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at the same time.
At the same time.
So the call-in number is 872-297-6389 or 872-299-0808. So we're gonna get started, and you guys, we're gonna start with a question.
Let's start with a question. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. Our first question. Well, first of all, you know what? You kind of gave a little bit about yourself,
Yes.
But if you could just kind of go in a little bit, deeper about who you are, why are you here today, and what can the audience gain from listening to you today? And start with valedictorian, if you don't mind.
Oh boy. Yes, I was valedictorian of my law school, UIC Law.
Yes.
Thank you. And yeah, I am a staff attorney at the Law Center for Better Housing. We do eviction defense work in hospitable living conditions and advocate for fair housing for all. And so I'm here today to talk about the eviction process, what people can kind of expect, and just a general overview of what it's like and tenants' rights and tenants' remedies.
Okay, so you know what? Here's our first question. Go into detail about the kinds of services that your organization provides. LCBH. Go ahead.
Sure. We do have an intake line that people can call, and if they're having issues with their housing, specifically conditions issues where the landlord won't fix very severe conditions issues. And then we also do, we staff the early resolution program. It's a program in the Cook County court system that helps pair tenants with attorneys when the tenant would otherwise be unrepresented in an eviction court. And there's also a legal aid provider that pairs unrepresented landlords as well. But it's just our organization does the tenant side of eviction cases. And so we help with the early resolution program. And then we do a lot of policy work promoting fair and equitable housing rights.
Wow, so you do a lot.
Telephone number, I think I got it.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So the Law Center for Better Housing has an intake line. It's 312-347-7600.
You got it up there? Okay.
And it is closed for the rest of the year, but you can call starting in January if you need help and assistance.
All right. So you know what? Go ahead, Marusa.
Okay.
Give us another question, please.
Yes. All right. So, Jacqueline, can you walk us through an eviction proceeding? Just kind of tell people what eviction means if they're facing that particular problem, and kind of explain how someone can go about starting a claim if they have an eviction notice filed against them.
Sure. So if we start from the beginning, an eviction proceeding is a court proceeding where the landlord is alleging that the tenant either doesn't have a valid tenancy or overstayed their valid tenancy. So before an eviction case can be filed, there has to be notice so there's a valid tenancy, and there would be a lease, either written or oral. So if you never filled out a lease, you probably have an oral lease, because the law says that you have to have a lease. And so first there has to be notice from the landlord saying, we're ending this tenancy. And that notice can come in a variety of ways. So it's a 5-day notice for due and unpaid rent. So if rent was due and it hasn't been paid, the landlord can give you a 5-day notice and say how much is owed.
Okay.
And then the name kind of suggests it, but you have 5 days to pay that balance, and the landlord has to accept that, and then your tenancy continues.
And is that balance usually your standard rent? Like,
Yeah.
can they, okay.
What about late fees on that?
Yeah.
The late
They
fees?
can put
Yeah.
late fees, okay.
Except so in Chicago, there is a limit to how much landlords can charge in late fees.
Okay,
The limit it's $10 for the first $500, and then 5% of any rent amount over $500.
oh wow.
So there's a little math involved in there.
Yeah.
But if you're getting charged like $200, $300 late fees, it's probably not allowed under the residential landlord-tenant ordinance.
Good to know.
Yeah.
No.
I got a question that's not on the list here.
Go ahead.
I did an interview like this, and when you go fill out, let's just change the subject real little bit. When you fill out an application for housing, is it illegal for the landlord to ask you if you have a criminal background? Yes.
In Chicago, yes.
Okay.
And I got a question, and it so happened.
I think, I'm gonna say I think it
Okay,
is.
you don't know, okay. If you don't,
We tend to not do, and you might know better,
I can look it up, because I actually don't know that either.
okay.
because we tend to do
Just
the eviction
Right.
and not the application end of housing work, but I think it is.
So they cannot ask the applicant whether they've been convicted of a crime.
So, because I think the order is they fill out the application first, and if they pass the application, then the landlord can ask them in that
That makes
order.
sense,
That's,
yeah.
that's why I said that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, no.
Yeah, I think so,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
All right, I didn't mean that so
No.
okay.
Okay, so no, but that's a really good question, because, people don't need to know. I got one that actually came into my inbox maybe about 3 days ago. Someone was asking me, and so I may be jumping the gun, but if so, let's stop me and we'll backtrack. So these people had the 5-day notice. I guess they were evicted, and what's supposed to happen is that the locks was changed. So now these people have belongings inside the house. Would you be able to give information if the landlord is keeping them out of the house with their belongings in?
I would say that if they received just a 5-day notice, and then on that 6th day, the locks were changed,
That's it.
they should call our intake line, because that's just not how the eviction proceedings work.
Okay.
That would be a self-help remedy, and those are not allowed.
Okay, well, thank you. And it just so happened that question came in. So let's just go ahead and get back on track here with some,
So after the notice, that's kind of where we left off.
Yeah, and there's other types of notices for other issues. So if the landlord's saying you violated a different part of the lease other than paying rent, that's a 10-day notice.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I learned something today.
So like, let's say your lease, this is an easy example, let's say your lease says no pets,
Right,
and the landlord finds out you have a cat.
right.
The landlord would give you a 10-day notice saying you're in violation of this part of the lease, and you have 10 days to fix it,
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
okay? So find somewhere else for your cat to live, or I don't know. But so you would have 10 days to fix that, otherwise eviction proceedings can start. The third type of notice would be just notice of non-renewal.
Okay.
So this is like, your lease was for a year, we're done, the landlord just wants to not renew it, or you're on a month-to-month tenancy. It's 30 days it's a 30-day notice if you've lived there less than 6 months. It's a 60-day notice if you've lived there more than 6 months but less than 3 years. And it's a 120-day notice if you've lived there for more than 3 years.
Wow. I had to go back and listen to that.
I know, so
I'm
many
gonna have to go back. That's
answers.
you just woo.
That's a lot.
This is a question I have. Now I've been through the eviction process.
Okay.
Now you have just this person. I have a friend that owned like 300 some units. and he told me personally that he doesn't rent to anyone that have an eviction unless it's 5 years old. Is that legal or, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I just wanna know, okay.
Right, okay. And
Wow.
you know what, and speaking of, I guess we can go into the next question. Does that show up on your credit?
It can, yes.
Okay.
So once an eviction case is filed, that would be you've got that notice, you were unable to cure the notice and you overstayed the notice. Okay, so that's when the landlord has the right to file the eviction proceedings. So like actually file a case in court. And that eviction becomes part of the public record, regardless of the outcome, unless it otherwise gets sealed.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
And even if it's dismissed with prejudice, dropped, it would still show up in the public records as such, and it's an eviction filed against you that was dismissed, unless it gets sealed.
Oh, wow.
oh
Okay.
wow, I didn't know.
That's kind of, ooh.
Yeah, and are people aware of this when they're going through the process, that there's a potential of this being on public record?
I mean, generally, I think people just want to get it sealed, so
Okay.
that can be part of negotiations.
Yeah.
And we try to get as many cases as we can sealed, especially when the landlord gets paid, either through rental assistance or otherwise. We come up with a really good settlement.
Okay.
So it can be part of the settlement, but yeah, if you don't get the case sealed, it'll stay there.
So let me ask some questions from the audience, and I apologize you all because I was not paying attention. But let me go back to one of the first questions is what this person says, what can I do because my landlord keeps on harassing me to move even though I'm still paying my rent?
Some of these like specific questions can be kind of tricky, I feel like.
Yeah, and I also I can answer like general questions, but I can't give actual legal advice because you shouldn't take legal advice from a podcast.
Right.
But yeah, so the landlord can issue a notice if they're not renewing the lease, right? If they want to end the tenancy, then the landlord's right under the law is to issue said notice as long as the lease is month to month at this point. If there's like a valid lease that's a year long and we're only 6 months into it, then they have 6 more months as long as they're not violating any terms of the lease.
And then I guess the second part of that question is, does it matter where the rent is coming from, if it's Section 8 or if they're personally paying? Are there stipulations?
I think it might depend what the lease says, but short of the lease not specifying, then I would think not, but I'm not certain.
Okay, so you know what, let's go and, I guess we can go into our next question. You guys clear right here? Any more questions?
Yeah, I want to go back to the eviction real quick. Or your
Sure.
first one. So even if that eviction is satisfied, say like you owe your landlord $2,000, but you satisfied, and if you go apply for another apartment and they pull up and say, well, you had eviction back in October of last year, but I mean, they said, well, we can't accept, but it was taken care of. So, I don't know. That's the landlord.
It's
tricky.
unfortunate, and it's allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's dismissed with prejudice, which means
Right.
you've taken care of it.
Okay, so you know what, I guess we're talking from a tenant's perspective from this next question, but what constitute safe apartment living condition?
Yeah, so the landlord has the requirements under the law to provide safe and habitable living conditions, which includes heat from September through May. I think it's September 15th through June 1st. The landlord has to have heat that heats the building to 68 degrees during the day and 66 degrees at night. And then you have to have utilities. You can't have, you need working fridges, working stoves, basically anything that is required for living.
Living
right?
condition.
Running water.
And I would like to stick a pin here. I would guess unless the landlord says that they're not responsible for the refrigerator, stove, and then they have that in the lease, then they don't have to provide that? Or do they? So that's,
I'm actually not 100% certain.
Okay.
If the lease specifically says no fridge, then I think it might be your responsibility to supply one.
Right.
But I'm not sure if the landlord is
Can
required.
write that in the lease.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
well, okay, so,
Sorry.
I just know that some apartments
Right.
come or if you're renting a house, for example, I know that sometimes it stipulates bring your own refrigerator, bring your own stove.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah,
we
I'm
can,
not actually sure if they can do that. I
Okay.
would have to look it up.
Okay.
okay,
Well, because I
One
know there's
question.
some apartments where like there's no microwave provided, and like you have to bring that on your own.
Yeah, I would think that a microwave isn't going to be considered
No.
A
necessary.
requirement
though.
for.
Someone
Yeah.
asked a question. You guys, you're welcome to call in if you like. Oh, you know what? I haven't even put the call in number up. But let me just say this. Somebody said, what if you lost your job, but you're willing to pay your landlord when you get the money? Now that's kind of.
You're always more than welcome to talk to your landlord and try to negotiate something on your own, right? Before a 5-day gets issued, before the landlord files an eviction case. That said, the landlord doesn't have to negotiate with you, and the landlord can just say, I'm issuing the 5-day notice because you're behind in rent, and then I'm filing this eviction case on the 6th day. Like, they can do that, but they might work with you. I mean, I think it
Hey,
depends
caller,
landlord to
this is
landlord.
Martin G.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. No, you know what? It's some pretty good questions coming through, and some of these questions are real specific. And so we may be going a bit deep, but I want to just go to this question because it kind of, I've heard it before. It says, if you were waiting 13 years for a low-income place and finally get it and fill out your lease, can you get denied the apartment if you owe the gas company and they give you only 3 days to pay? That may not be in this ballpark here, but that may be a little bit technical, but I wanted to ask, and if it is, okay.
That's a good one too, because
Yeah.
some of us do have outstanding gas bills.
Yeah,
You
we do.
In some places, when you rent them, they want you to pay your own gas. So they figure if you can't get no gas, you can't rent. So that,
Yeah.
So I guess, because again, we're talking about eviction, but so much stuff comes with that.
Yeah.
So just for the sake, we're gonna stay down the eviction road.
Okay.
Okay, we gonna, and remind me when y'all with the questions, I just wanted to be fair, but we're gonna stay over here with the evictions. We'll get to the gas company maybe later.
Maybe
And to
later.
be fair, I don't do subsidized eviction. That's a whole different.
Subsidized.
Subsidized housing eviction.
Right.
I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
So I don't really know a lot about subsidized housing law.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's good, because that question was, one of the questions was based on Section 8, and that's what she was asking, so at least we know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go
But I would
here.
encourage them to call either Carpels or Legal Aid Chicago, because Legal Aid Chicago handles the subsidized housing.
Okay, and then we already said the number, you can say it again, to report issues related to the conditions of your living space. We already said that same number, right?
Yeah, the 312.
312
347.
347
Oh,
yeah.
7600.
That's our intake line.
Okay.
That's like if you're calling because you have like an actual legal issue. If you need to report conditions issues, the best place to call is 311.
311, yeah.
Okay,
Always call 311 and report those conditions issues.
okay, so there you have it.
Yeah.
Marissa.
Yeah.
So the other important thing about conditions issues is you have to notify the landlord in writing. In writing is the best way. Also, you can call 311, but notify the landlord in writing about the conditions issues first. And the landlord has 14 days to fix them. Okay? If the landlord doesn't fix them by the 14th day, then on the 15th day, you can start to do one of two things. You can withhold rent in the amount that the conditions lowers the fair market rental value of the unit, or you can fix it yourself and deduct the cost of fixing it from your rent.
And that's only after you've given them notice, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So
And waited 14 days.
Is it, what about if you send them a text or email
Good question.
Yeah, because you need something concrete,
Yeah.
proving that you sent it to the
That you sent
landlord.
that.
Yes, the really difficult ones is like, well, I always call my landlord.
Right.
Well, that's not definitive proof that they were notified.
So just to be
Right.
clear, text and email, of course, is documentation. It works.
Yeah.
Writing.
Perfect. Is it-
Also certified letters are
Certified,
great.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can go to rentervention.com. It's a website that the Law Center for Better Housing helped create.
Say that again.
Rentervention.
Spell it out.
That's what I was gonna say. Please spell it.
I
Google
got
Google
the
it.
same
Google
thing.
it.
RENTERVENTION. Rentervention.com. And it's powered by AI.
Oh,
And
God.
Rennie, the AI bot, will help you write a 14-day letter for your landlord.
Oh.
So he'll ask you what conditions, issues you have, and you can tell Rennie, the bot, and he'll draft a 14-day letter for you, and then you can even have him send it off.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So nice.
And spell it one more time for us again.
RENTERVENTION. Rentervention.
Make sure you guys share this video because this is valuable information.
Yes.
Trust me, I thought I knew all the rules, but I didn't know. I'm learning something different today now. Wow.
Yeah, and then so you can go there to get the 14-day letter. The bot can send it, or you can send it, and then also call 311 to just make sure that notice is given.
You're covering all your bases.
Right.
Exactly.
So other words, don't go out there because your hot water's not working and spend your rent up. You spend your
Yeah.
rent.
Right. Right. You gotta follow
There's a
the
procedure.
procedures. Yeah, follow the process. Okay.
Okay, so I have a question. I guess we talked kind of about the notice that the landlord is required to give you. So just in general, how long does it take for an eviction to kind of go through the court process? And like, what are those steps for people who might be kind of, court is scary and not everybody is fully aware of what process is going to go down, what judges are going to ask them. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway is for tenants to go to their first court date.
Okay.
Please go. We really encourage that because you'll get paired with somebody in the early resolution program. So the judge will pair you with ERP, early resolution program. It pairs staff attorneys like myself with tenants who are not represented in eviction court, and then we can evaluate your specific case and see what's going on in your specific case, give you legal advice, help you negotiate, and just give you guidance along the way. And so that happens though when you go to your first court date.
Okay.
So prior to the first court date, so the case gets filed, then the plaintiff has to serve you, right? Give you the summons, which is gonna have that first court date on it. So then you go to your first court date, you go to ERP, you talk to an attorney, either from the Law Center for Better Housing or a different legal aid provider, depending on your specific circumstances, because we all have different specialties. And then if it's not settled, you'll go back to your next court date, and that's when you'll get transferred to a courtroom. And in that courtroom, that's when you would get into specifics of like, if there's any motions that need to be filed, anything like that. Otherwise, it'll get set for trial. So ERP can take a couple weeks.
Okay.
And then the transfer takes another 2 weeks, and then setting it for trial takes another 2 weeks, and then the day of trial is actually the last day you have for the right to cure. So everybody in Chicago has a right to cure, as long there's some circumstances where you don't, and it's where the landlord lives in the building with you, basically.
Can you kind of explain what the right to cure means?
Yeah, so the right to cure is for people that are facing eviction for unpaid rent, and you have a one-time right to cure, which means you can pay everything owed plus court costs, but not attorney's fees. The landlord has to accept it and renew and revalidate your tenancy, and then you can continue to live there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question too. So,
Sure.
I've been through that before, and I stayed another year, and it worked out perfect. So does that eviction still stay there, even though you?
Yes, unless you get it sealed. And you can ask for it to be sealed,
Okay.
and it kind of depends on the situation and who your landlord is, and yeah, it depends on specific situations and circumstances, but yes, if you don't get it sealed, it would still be there.
One more question.
Go ahead, go ahead. No,
Sorry.
go on.
Sorry. I had a friend that was going through the eviction process, but he'd never been served.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like avoiding the landlord, and I was like, man, eventually you're gonna come home one day and your stuff is gone. So how that works, you know?
Yeah, so service is what is required for like due process, right?
Right.
A defendant has the right to know about a case that's being brought against them. And so the plaintiff, the landlord, and their attorney have to take reasonable steps to notify the defendant. So in Chicago, that means the sheriff will come and bring you papers,
Mm-hmm.
okay?